The latest upgrade to Daylite, version 4.2, not only improves the stability and functionality of Daylite, but it also introduces some significant new features, which I'm going to cover briefly in this tutorial. Let's take a closer look at the new sync indicator. When you upgrade to Daylite 4.2, you'll notice that there's nothing different on the interface. However, as soon as your Daylite tries to sync with the server, you'll see the new sync indicator appear in the top right corner, right next to the full screen button. Now they've done a pretty good job at making this non-intrusive. So as you're working with Daylite, the only time you'll ever see this is when an active sync is happening. Now for demoing purposes, I'm going to shut off our Daylite server and show you what happens if Daylite was unable to reach the server. Here we go, our Daylite server is now off, and let me try to do that sync again. As you can see, our sync indicator now has a lightning bulb instead of the two arrows circling. If I tap on that lightning bulb, I'll get a pop-up which tells me that Daylite cannot sync and the server is not reachable. Now I can retry the sync or go to a support article. Since we know what the problem is, I won't need to push any of these buttons. Once we switch the Daylite server back on, Daylite will be able to reach the server and continue the sync. Now let's take a look at my new favorite feature in 4.2 called the duplicate checker. I'm going to navigate to the edit menu and choose Find Duplicate Contacts. This new feature searches our Daylite database and finds any contact records, people, or companies that are duplicated in our database. Now as your database grows, you're inevitably going to end up with some duplicate contacts, especially if you're in a multi-user environment. You'll notice that the duplicate checker can find duplicates based on email, phone, and name. Let's take a look at email. In the middle pane, we have combined preview and items to be combined. So we have two records that seem to have the same email address. Steve Jobson has steve@email.com and Steve Chambers has steve@email.com along with a secondary email address. Now, the combined preview means that it's going to take everything from both these records and combine them into Steve Jobson. If I checkbox this here, you'll notice that by selecting this star, the combined preview will make Steve Chambers the default contact. Now in this case, we don't want to combine these because they're two separate records that seem to have ended up with the same email address. So to resolve this, let's simply look up Steve Chambers and remove this steve@email.com email. I'm going to double click on the record to go into edit mode, and I'm simply going to remove this email. Let's hit done and get back into our duplicate checker. As you can see now, that has been resolved. Next we have phone. Now we have again a similar situation with two different contacts, and Daylite wants to combine them. And again, we don't want to combine two of the same contact records. We simply want to fix the phone number that's been entered in incorrectly. If I come down to the name section, here's where we see the combined preview with both of these records. Now in this case, we do have two contacts with the exact same name, except one of them has more information and the other one has less information. Now, just a rule of thumb, it's a good idea to see which record has more information and identify that one as the default record. That way, anything that is in this contact will automatically be combined into this record here. Now, you'll also notice down here a little note stating that the checked items will be combined. If values conflict, the starred item will be used and the unused value will be recorded in a note. So in this case, we do want to combine these two records. Let's go ahead and tap combine. And that's it. Let's do the same thing with Jenny Miller. As we can see, this is the record that is going to be my default one. And I'm going to hit combine. And now let's take a look at companies. Flip over to companies. We see Smith & Associates. I can take a good look at both of these records. And in this case, this is the correct one. I'm going to go ahead and hit combine. And that's how the duplicate checker works. 4.2 also introduces French localization of Daylite, along with German localization. Now these are only some of the new features added to 4.2. For a complete list of the awesome new features and fixes in 4.2, I encourage you to visit marketcircle.com. Hope you found this tutorial helpful.